In this podcast, how to tell if scars are getting in the way of your healing process, how to tell if hidden food sensitivities are driving disease in your body, the little-known way to unleash your body's healing power from within, and are beets the best food for endurance exercise? Well, hello, everybody. This is Manny Aragon, and welcome back to the Structural Performance Podcast. This is number 7 in the series, and today we have some pretty interesting topics, I think, things that I'd like to share and things that I've kind of researched and found out about that they're unusual in some ways to the general public, but they're not so unusual in the natural wellness community and the holistic wellness community. But these are things that everyday people can use, first of all, to find out about how their health is and why maybe they have some problems that are difficult to solve and all that. And then second of all, to be able to really easily implement some of the things I'm going to talk about in your life to, again, resolve, first of all, assess and then resolve problems that may exist or imbalances. So anyway, let's get started on the first subject, how to tell if scars are getting in the way of your healing process. And this is actually a topic that it seems kind of random, on the surface when you first listen to it. What is, why would scars be getting in the way of my healing process? Scars are in the surface of the skin. I have an internal problem, or I've got some other kind of problem that maybe it's a muscular problem deep below the skin. Why would scars be getting in the way of healing that? And that's a great question. So first, we're going to start off with how to tell if scars are getting in the way of your healing process, and then I'll go into logic of why that is most likely the case. There are various theories on it. So we'll get into that in a bit. But first off, if you have some kind of health challenge or musculoskeletal challenge, some kind of pain in your body, and basically you've either suffered from it for a long time or you've tried many different methods to resolve it. You're healing, but not quite as quickly as you think you should. So it might be like retarded healing or delayed healing or slowed healing. You might have done all of the right things. Everything that has been recommended, you might have gone through laundry lists of things that you should be doing to get better, and yet you're either only marginally better or you're seeing only marginal progress, or you're just not progressing, or perhaps you're getting worse. You have visible scars or have had surgery or surgeries in the past. And this is a big one. So visible scars, when I go over my body for a scar assessment, it's always something new that I find. You have the various accidents, the big ones that stick in my mind over the years, but you forget most of the little ones, and those are the vast majority. And yet, many of those little ones can cause scars. So scars that may not be visible at this point, but you start with the visible scars. Okay, so for example, I have a scar on my right palm, the base of my right palm, that years ago when I was riding a mountain bike and fell off, I got a rock lodged in my hand, and the surgeon had to sew it up. So there's a scar. There's a scar there, and I forget about that one a lot, but I can kind of a little bit still see it. I've had 2 minor surgeries for inguinal hernia over the years. Those scars are still there. The first one you can't really see. The second one is more recent, maybe 5-6 years ago. I can see that one. That one's still there. Then there are the ones that I can't see that I know that are there. And this is actually a really big one. So almost everybody, I would probably say, let's just go out on a limb and say everybody at some time in their life, most likely when they were a child, and perhaps a few times when they're adult, but mostly when they were a child, when they're children and growing up, have fallen on their knees and scraped their knee. And usually at some point it's bad enough, or the cumulative scrapings and fallings are bad enough to cause some kind of scarring, whether it be on the surface or internally. But what you can do is you can just reach down and feel the skin on your knee, just below your patella, your kneecap. Now, if you've already had surgery there, you don't even need to do this because you know that you have scarring. But if you feel the skin just above the kneecap on the quadricep, and then you go across the kneecap, the skin gets taut, and then you go below the knee, and you can feel the skin thicken in there. That skin thickens in there not because it's naturally thicker. It thickens in there because those are calluses, those are scars that have built up over the years from falling on your knees. Now, I haven't done that a lot as an adult, but there were a number of years, probably first, 13 years or 12 years of my structural bodywork practice, I did a fair amount of my sessions on my knees. So I was actually on my knees. And although I had padding or carpet or something, my knees didn't hurt, there was still a callus that would build up on my knee. So almost everybody has something going on with their knees scar-wise. Whether or not you can see it, you can just feel the thickened skin. So whether you know that you have them or not, if you have no other scars in your body, go to your knees, possibly even your elbows. That might be another spot, but knees. Real common places for scars would be, if you've had any kind of dermatological removal. So I had something on my face removed years ago, but it's probably still scarred in there. If I feel around, I could probably maybe feel a slight difference in the elasticity of the skin in certain areas. So check your body. Go through and check your body. Now, if you already know you have one, write down the ones that you know that you have, and then add things like knees and any other areas that you can find by doing checks. If you've had, say, for example, bad acne at one time or another, or you've had a part of your body that you pick at over and over and over again, there's a scarring that happens there. So those are also areas for scars. Now, why are scars getting in the way of your healing process? Why are scars getting in the way of your healing process? And this is a question that I don't know that I have an absolute answer for. But there's a pretty good theory for why that's the case. Many of you have experienced acupuncture or have had acupuncture or heard about acupuncture or have read about the theory of how acupuncture works, the meridian theory, how the energy in the body travels through the meridians of the body, and there's some way of regulating the health or the healthy energy or the life force of the body via these energy pathways. And the way of doing that is by keeping them open so the energy can flow like cars on a freeway. And so this is one theory. It's like the meridian theory of why scars are possibly getting in the way of your healing process. And that is because the acupuncture meridians actually travel through the fascial tissue at various levels and depths in the body. But for sure, they are on the skin and they are in the epidermis and dermis, dermal layer, and in the fascial layers. So these are all, when you have an injury, an area that gets injured or scarred, basically your body then deposits, it repairs the area in a way that will make it harder to be injured next time. So it's tougher. It's more tough. And the collagenous fibers that are inside in the tissue that's been deposited in that area are not aligned. They're kind of cattywampus. They're all over the place. And the idea is that your body kind of like throws all this stuff in there to strengthen the area, but but it you know, it's kind of doing it in an emergency response fashion. So it's the area is thickened. Usually, the area is it's lacking in the elasticity that the surrounding tissue has. Pardon me. And because of that, the chi or the energy or the life force does not flow through that area as readily. And these meridians, if you can, I'll put a link in the show notes to a meridian map of the body, so you can see how they flow. But they're not short little things. They flow the length of the body. They go to depths. They go through particular organs, to particular organs, and along parts of the surface of the body. And this is why the acupuncture points are accessible, because they run along the meridians, and they tend to be kind of like intersections, so to speak, in terms of, or what the Chinese practitioners might say, pools of energy. I am not a Chinese practitioner. I live with one, but and I'm not an expert on that. But from my general understanding, that's the case. So what's interesting is that these tissues that the meridians travel through are also they're the same tissues as the fascial tissues. So fascia is a type of connective tissue that is pervasive in the body. It runs throughout the body. It's continuous unless it's been cut. It's continuous three-dimensionally, like a three-dimensional web throughout the body, wrapping every muscle fiber, every bundle of fibers, the whole muscle. At the ends of the muscle, it comes down into the tendon and then attaches to not the next bone or the bone, but the periosteum, which is the fascial wrapper of the bone, and so on and so forth. Ligaments are also fascial tissue. The organs are wrapped in fascia at various layers. The brain, everything's wrapped in fascia. And this tissue is continuous, and it also has a kind of piezoelectric quality to it. So there's a when the tissue stretches and shrinks, so when there's force applied to this tissue, there's some kind of response, nervous system response, whether it be electrical, and this may be outside of the actual neural tissue itself, but there's some kind of response, electrical or piezoelectrical or strain, which then triggers sensors, strain sensors in the body and such. So when you have scars, basically you are slowing or blocking or confusing the flow of that meridian energy. And so when people are assessed using kinesiological methods for, what is, say, when you're prioritizing what the challenge is with the person who's sitting in front of you, they may come in with various complaints, but almost inevitably the challenge is that there is scarring in their tissues, which is holding back their response to healing. It doesn't mean it's blocked. It just means that it's slowed. So if you want to be most efficient, if you want to open up your healing process, then you've got to deal with those scars, and you've got to treat them as a priority before anything else. That doesn't preclude addressing the other problems as well, but without doing that, you'll get a slowed response. You'll get a less efficient response. And the idea is, if you have a challenge, you want to get better as fast as you possibly can, right? So that's the theory behind it. So now, what would be, let's go to topic number 2, what is a little known way to unleash your body's healing power from within? And this is exactly what we're talking about. In order to become more efficient and much faster at healing, to unleash your body's ability to heal at the speed that it needs to heal, you've got to do 2 things. You've really got to do 2 things, at minimum, probably more, but let's start with 2. The very first one is you've got to reduce the impact of the scarring on the flow of meridian energy. And so you've got to basically work through that scar tissue to get the collagenous fibers in the scar tissue to become more organized, the scar tissue to become more elastic like the surrounding tissue, so there's more of a uniformity to the elasticity, so that the passage of energy through that area is not blocked or slowed, but actually travels freely. And the way you do that, one, is by identifying where the scars are in the body, and then two, by physically rubbing your scars to warm the area and to get the collagenous fibers to soften and start to organize. And this is something that I do regularly in my practice as I work with scar tissue. And this goes from, keloid burns to surgical scars to, accidents. I had one client who had a table saw fall on his leg. And so, he has a massive scar from that. It was a pretty big accident. So things like that. Road rash. If you're a biker and you fall off your bike, that if you get bad enough road rash, that skin is going to be it's going to be thickened, and it's going to be there's going to be scar tissue in there. So you've got to free that up. You really got to free that up. One, it'll help you to move better. It'll help your overall body movement and your biomechanics and your efficiency there. But two, it'll free up your body to start doing what it knows how to do best and stop blocking it. So what are the general recommendations for rubbing scars are, and there's plenty of research that shows that manual therapy on scar tissue will, if not resolve the scar tissue completely, it will break it up and bring more elasticity in the tissue, which is really what we're trying to do. So there's plenty of research out there that shows that. So the way that you do that is you want to rub your scars, I say as a rule of thumb, twice a day, 4 minutes at a time. So you pick your scars. I usually do 2 at a time. I rub them 2 at a time, 4 minutes. For me, I have 3 sets of scars that I know about. So I have my knees, I have my hernias, and I have my hand scar, and maybe the one on my face. So I rub those, and I just set the timer, and I rub them. Now, there's an even more effective way of doing this, and that is to rub them with oil, a type of oil, special type of oil. Now, in the past, and you've probably heard this as well, there is kind of like a home remedy is to rub vitamin E oil into your scars. And if you rub vitamin E oil into your scars regularly, then you'll help resolve your scars. And that does work to some extent. It works best when you have natural form of vitamin E or whole food form of vitamin E, rather than, say, a vast majority of the vitamin E you buy in the store is going to be a synthetic vitamin E. It's like a byproduct of industrial production. So you can use that. That does work to some extent, but your body has many different sensorial capabilities, and it knows when something is from a food source that it knows how to process and deal with, because there's so many different micromolecules that are going to be in a food source vitamin E as opposed to a purified fractionated vitamin E that's from an industrial source. There may be some industrial contaminants in there at a low level, and they're still there, and other things like that, but from a food source. So the good sources of this are, the first being wheat germ oil, and the second being sesame oil. Those two oils can be very effective. And one of those is going to work really well for you, and the other one is not. The other one actually, you may get some advancement with getting your scars to release, but it won't be anywhere near as fast as the other one. So you've got to figure out which one is which. Now, when people come into my office, I'm able to test them or make an assessment to see which one works for them best. But if you're not able to do that, then the best way is to you've kind of got to guess at it, and you might get the wrong one. But there's some big kind of red flags that'll help you choose if you're experiencing any of those. And so, for example, if you already know that you have an intolerance to grains or sugars or starchy foods, then, or you're a blood type O, dairy, if you also have a dairy intolerance, those are probably going to steer you more towards sesame seed oil. That's going to be a more, and you want to make sure you don't get rancid oil. So if you're buying sesame seed oil in the spice section, make sure you get it in a fresh source, because seeds degrade quite quickly. The oil in seeds and nuts degrades quite quickly, and so it can be very difficult to get a non-rancid sesame seed oil. I have a good source. I'll post a link to it in the show notes, as well as for the wheat germ oil as well. They're not expensive, and they can be very, very effective. So if you know that about yourself already, if you have a grain intolerance, if you're blood type O, if you have trouble digesting starchy carbohydrates, if sugar is very inflammatory for you, if you have a dairy intolerance, those types of things, if you know those exist for you, then most likely you're going to be a candidate for sesame seed oil. That said, the only way to really tell is to get assessed by a properly trained practitioner. But this doesn't preclude you from trying on your own and getting some progress. So now, a third way of doing this, and this kind of eliminates the issue with the oil completely, is if you have a low-level laser, so low-energy laser like a low-energy healing laser. It doesn't need to penetrate the skin, so it doesn't need to be super strong. And the point being that you want to use that in place of rubbing. So 4 minutes twice a day on each scar, basically running the laser over that, and that'll help heal that as well. Now, I don't sell lasers. I actually don't have one in my office. It's something that I perhaps will add to my practice. It's at this point, I know people who use them, and for this specific purpose, it works very well. But the oil, I think, is just a much simpler solution for people to take home and do. If you rub without oil, it'll work too, but oil rubbing is more effective. The laser could be possibly more effective depending on the type of laser you use and the amount of time you spend with it. So those are some ways to get your body able to focus on what's really challenging it, because the meridians will then be freed up, and so you'll have that much more of your healing potential available to you. Now, that said, I don't think in good conscience I could recommend that without saying that your body has an inherent ability to heal itself. It can heal just about anything outside of extreme emergency, life-threatening types of things, which may require outside intervention to really keep you alive so that your body can then heal. But your body has an amazing innate ability to heal itself. And it works best. That ability is strongest when your body has all of the parts that it needs, all of the raw materials that it needs to replace what's been damaged. So we say, when your body has genuine replacement parts, it can do its job best. So it's not trying to, it's not kind of like scrounging through a junkyard, hoping to find the right part. It's got a fully stocked, organized shelf of nutrition, of parts that it can draw from to heal itself. And there's almost nobody out there that I've seen who has all of those parts. So nutrition is in such a state of disarray, and the public is extremely uninformed. Nobody even knows what being fully healthy is. Nobody knows what good nutrition really is. But good nutrition, at its minimum, is that the body has what it needs to repair itself, and that will slow the aging process, and that will cause you to heal more readily, that will keep disease away, and so on and so forth. And so that means that your body, when it has enough of those parts, it's also it means that you're going to be having good life habits so that you're not introducing things into your body that are destructive and are basically draining your body of particular types of parts because it keeps trying to repair the damage done by eating those types of foods or being exposed to the whatever environmental chemicals or whatever, so on and so forth. So the more stressed your body is, the more important having the right foods is. And at some point, your body becomes stressed to the extent that healing starts to become slowed. The more stress, the slower the healing. And there are various types of stress. We'll talk about this in different podcasts, but just to kind of like throw that all in there. So, yes, rub your scars, find them, rub them, determine which oil or use the laser or rub without. And look at what are the nutrients that are missing from your body that it needs right now. So these aren't like USRDA, random amounts of carbohydrate, this much protein, this much. We're talking about very specific nutrients. And how do you determine which ones you need? And that's another challenging problem there. There are various diets that one can eat that will do a pretty good job. And then after that, to get to the next level, you've really got to have assessments, somebody to assess your body to figure out what your body, basically challenging your nervous system to determine what is it that your body really needs right now. Your body will tell the practitioner what that is. But when it becomes apparent, when that assessment is done, it becomes apparent, then you can be very exact and you can be very efficient in your delivery of the nutrients that you need right now to make forward progress. Forward progress can then be rapid. This is in the context of starting out with your scars, because almost everybody who I've assessed has scars as a number one issue getting in the way of everything else. It's number one priority. Everything else is prioritized lower. So once you get your scars, you're rubbing your scars every day, then things will start to change. Your healing will improve, and then you add in the genuine replacement parts, you're going to see a rapid improvement. So, alrighty, and healing things that are not normally able to heal, or that we would consider unhealable, or things that we would consider that don't resolve certain types of imbalances in the body. Okay, so now another piece to this problem or question is food sensitivity. So how to tell if food sensitivities are driving disease in your body. So food sensitivities, right off the bat, are stressors. Well, we've already talked about stressors and their impact on the body and the healing process. But if you're constantly stressing your body, then you're going to be driving yourself into imbalance. You're going to be impeding your body's ability to heal itself while damaging your body, causing damage. So at some point, there will be some pushback, like i.e. you'll start to lose functionality, or you'll start to experience things that are less than optimal in the way that you feel, look, and perform. So how do you tell if you have food sensitivities? This is a big business these days. People go to doctors, they get expensive tests. They'll come into my office. I've taken the allergy test. I'm not allergic to anything, but there's these problems, and the problems that they outline to me are totally indicative of a sensitivity rather than an allergy, which is what they're being tested for. So, and there are various levels of tests, but what you should know about lab tests, first of all, are that in order to design a laboratory test, like a blood test or some kind of assessment that they're doing in the lab, you've got to have parameters. You've got to have parameters. Below those parameters, you consider them to be a negative response in general. Perhaps in some cases above a certain threshold, it's a negative, and the opposing would be true. When you're above the threshold, typically the response would tend to be positive. A positive response in, say, the case of an allergy test would mean typically that you have an allergy to whatever the stressor was, the allergen. So, or you have antibodies present in your blood or whatever the test was. So there is a threshold. Below that threshold, you may have antigens in your bloodstream, but they're not enough to say for sure this is a positive for that particular test. So typically what the case is with these tests is that the tests show that a person has over a certain threshold and certain types of antigens, let's say we're doing an allergy test, to particular types of stressors or foods or whatever in the bloodstream. Now, say you get an all negative. You get an all negative results on whatever they're testing. First of all, they're only testing for specific antigens. So, you know, it's limited to what they're testing for. So you may have an allergy to something they're not testing for, in which case, what's the point in taking the test? You know, this is where things start to get expensive because you can take a lot of tests and still not hit everything. Because remember, each test has to look for a very particular type of molecule or response. So if you have that case, then you could easily miss something. And I see this all the time. People spend thousands of dollars, come in, they're frustrated. I don't know what's wrong with me. Doctors say nothing. Or they're absolutely sure that there's no allergy or sensitivity possible in their body, yet they show all the signs of it. So now, below that threshold, remember, you can have antibodies or whatever or some kind of response in your blood, and this is a kind of like presence, for example, and it won't register positive. But so you can say, hey, I tested clear, but you could still have antibodies for every single thing on the test, and you know, quote unquote, test clear that you're negative and everything's okay. It's not okay. Then there are more sensitive tests that you can do that will look at, say, a lower threshold, and this is the nature of laboratory testing. So then there are assessments that you can use that will test the presence of any level of these things, any kind of response, and this is what's called nervous system testing or muscle testing or what do you call it? You know, applied kinesiological testing. So this type of testing doesn't require a threshold. There has to be some response by your nervous system to the stressor. And it's a much more sensitive test. And in that work, it's not a test, it's an assessment. And in that sense, there is no diagnostics being done. In that sense, there is an assessment. Do we believe that we see a response from this? And if so, then, you know, we have action steps we can take. Okay, so what are some of the signs of hidden food sensitivities? Your disease is progressing and getting worse. You're unusually tired all of the time. You're not energetic. You have environmental allergies. So you might have allergies to pollen. You might have tested positive on some environmental allergy things, and yet you can't get rid of them. They just are. Not true. You absolutely can. There are causes for that, and you can get rid of them. But you've got to be able to look more deeply than the surface. So if you have environmental allergies, there's a very good, or even food allergies, there's a very good possibility that you also have other food sensitivities and you know, various other things going on in the body. So you have trouble thinking clearly, you have brain fog, you have moodiness, you have rashes on your skin or dandruff or any kind of skin problem, rash or scaly skin, hives, you're getting some kind of psoriasis, any of that type of thing, eczema. You have a disease that has inflammation at its basis, which is any and all diseases for the most part. So if you have a disease, you've most likely got some kind of hidden food sensitivity. There's something driving that disease. It doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Defecating less than 3 times a day. So if you are not pooping as often as you're eating, then you've probably got something going on that's causing you to become constipated. Now, some of the most common food sensitivities are grains, cow dairy, nightshades, eggs, sugar, starchy carbohydrates, and there's more of them, but those are the basic ones. So if you have a response to any of those, to beer, to alcohol, any of that stuff, you get reflux, all those things are signs of food sensitivity. So they're only hidden until you discover them. They're only hidden until you discover them. And know this, a food sensitivity, you might eat something or have a little tiny bit of something that you're not aware that you're eating in a sauce or in some kind of coating or a processed food or something like that. But it doesn't affect you right away, so you think to yourself, okay, that was okay. Well, 3 days later or a week later, you get a response. Very difficult to go back and remember what might have caused it since you've eaten so many different things. So, what can you do about that? And this is kind of like a biggie, but what can you do about that? And a lot of people try to discover their food sensitivities using elimination diets. And elimination diets sometimes work. I'm going to eliminate all these foods, and then I'm going to add them back one by one and see. The key with elimination diets is most people don't eliminate enough of the stressors. They don't eliminate all the stressors because they're not aware of what the stressors are. So, again, the best way to get a clear idea of what the stressors are is to go get a kinesiological assessment with somebody who's trained in how to do that. Once you have that, you can have a pretty good idea of where to start. There are lists. I will add a link to a kind of restricted diet that I use as the basis. It's not the end-all be-all. I'll modify it depending on the person. Sometimes there are foods that don't work for the person within that. But for the most part, this is an anti-inflammatory type of diet. It's a diet of foods that don't generally cause inflammation in the body at whatever level. And the ones that are not present on this diet tend to be ones that are potential inflammatory and foods that people have sensitivities to. So I'll put a link to that. You can look at that. But elimination diets only work if you eliminate everything, and you eliminate for at least 60 days. So you're eliminating for a long time, 2 months. And then if you've got a kind of advanced inflammatory situation going on, you've got to also get your body to get out of the inflammation. So you've got to reduce the inflammation. And most of the time, if you've got a food sensitivity and you've got inflammation, it's because there's been compromise in the endothelial lining of your gut. So your gut lining itself, and that needs to repair. Now, it will repair to some extent on its own, but when you help it repair by giving it the genuine replacement parts, it'll repair much more quickly. And then this exercise in elimination diet becomes much more effective because you're starting from a stronger place. You're starting from more of a zero than, whatever it is and hoping. So that way, when you start to slowly add foods back later on, and I have a program for this, I'll probably talk about this more in another podcast, but when you start to add things back to your diet that you can get an immediate response. And you don't add them all at once. You might add one every 2 to 3 days. So you can add it, wait 2 to 3 days before you add another one and see what the response is. When you've gone back to that 0 point or close to it, your body will react or respond much more quickly to a stressor food than it will if you're already inflamed. So you'll get a very, very clear idea of what foods are not working for you using the elimination diet process if you do that. Now, that's kind of an arduous process. Now, there's another way to do it, and I'll talk more in depth about this in another podcast, and it's to use heart rate variability. And there's a great program, I will put a link to it, called Sweet Beets. Unfortunately, it's only on iOS. It's only on Apple app. And I don't believe there's one that's an analog for Android. So the downfall of Android is it's too difficult to make a million trillion types of app for all the different types of Android devices. So the variety isn't there for Android apps that there is for Apple apps. In this case, this is a great one. It's called Sweet Beets. I will link to it, and you probably need to buy some kind of either have a Bluetooth heart rate monitor, and or you can buy one. I think there's links off the Sweet Beets site, and then you can use that. They have a protocol for determining food sensitivities that way. So that's another way of doing it. You can do it on your own. If you can't see a kinesiologist, you can do that. I have not used that method, but luckily the iPhone 6 is out. I'll be switching back from my archaic Android device, and I'll be updating you on how that's been working for me and what I feel, to what level I feel this Sweet Beets works in relative to the kinesiological testing, or assessment. So the last topic of the day is, are beets the best food for endurance exercise? And, if you're an endurance athlete, you've probably already heard something about beets. You've probably already heard about liver and some other things out there. But this is for people who really haven't heard. And it's a few more specifics. This is a really, really great way to improve your endurance. It's totally legal, and it works. It works very well. And the only drawbacks is that you're going to have some red pee and some red poo. But aside from that, if you can live with that, then you'll get great benefit from this. And this is tried and true. I've done it. Highly recommend it. Beets are incredibly, they contain betaine and other types of nutrients that help to clear the liver, basically, to help to clear the liver. Now, they do also other things. Beets and beetroot juice. So this is specifically a study on beetroot juice. You can eat beets, you can juice beets. I kind of do both. But beetroot juice specifically has been shown scientifically to improve endurance. Okay? It increases the blood nitrate level. So when your blood nitrates increase, then this helps to vasodilate or open up your blood vessels, allowing for improved blood flow or easier blood flow. It reduces the resistance to blood flow and minimizes the eddy currents and such. Beetroot juice also reduces the resting blood oxygen consumption of your body. So it helps your muscles, your body to become more efficient in terms of oxygen consumption. And remember, when we're talking about exercise and endurance exercise and top-end exercise, we're really talking about oxygen utilization efficiency. How efficient is your body at using oxygen when you're exercising? And then how much oxygen can you get into your body? The more efficiently you use oxygen, the more endurance you're going to have, and the more energy output you're going to be able to achieve in a shorter period of time, which means there's a speed element to it. And there are a whole bunch of more factors to that as well, but that's part of it. It lowers your resting blood pressure, most likely because of the vasodilation of the blood vessels. And in studies, it's been shown to improve the time to exhaustion in moderate and high intensity exercise by 15%. That's huge. 15% is huge. So if you're a pro athlete and you're out there and you're, trying to improve your performance or your endurance, maybe 1 to 2% a year, if you're lucky, if you're at the top end, the pointy end, and you're drinking beetroot juice, you can get 15%. Boy, that's a whole new ballgame. It's huge. If you're an age group or whatever, you're out there, this will help improve your performance. What I found generally is it's better to use consistency you're going to get better results with consistent use than you are with one-time use. It doesn't mean you will get results with one-time use, but like anything, you want to acclimate your body to assimilating this type of nutrient in the form that it's in with minimum gastric distress. So, if you all of a sudden say like, hey, this is great, I'm going to drink this on race day, even though I've never tried it, maybe you'll suddenly have diarrhea. Who knows? You don't want to do that. You want to really try that out in practice. And my suggestion would be to work your way on up in terms of volume. You might want to sip it at first and then, find whatever works best for you, the amount that works best for you. Beets also are notorious for cleaning the liver. Beets and then the the greens associated with them. Great for cleaning the liver, giving the liver the genuine replacement parts for allowing it to clean itself out. It's one of the best, most responsive regenerative organs that we have in our body, and this just kind of supercharges that process. So I will go ahead and link to that study as well in the show notes, and hopefully you've gotten good use out of what I've had to share in today's podcast. And by all means, you can comment on my website. You can. I also have a comment form. You can send me a direct comment if you want. I prefer that you comment on my website. If you have questions, follow up in the comment section on my blog, which this will be led off of. So follow up, because I will definitely answer questions as they come up. And I want to know what questions you have about this, because ideally I'm answering questions that you have, that most people have, so that I can better serve you. So thanks again for joining us. This is Manny Aragon of the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance, and this is a Structural Performance Podcast. All the best.